Welcome everyone to day 4 of the Akom Kese 2021 conference. I am Akomfo Dr. Ajwatano, and I am the secretary for the Akom Kese board. And we are very delighted that you are able to join us this evening for a presentation by Wolfa Yao Tyus. He will be speaking on creating a loving culture in our relationships. So before we begin, just want to go over some housekeeping. So we do ask that while the presentation is taking place, that you remain on mute and feel free to engage via the chat. And towards the end, we will be taking questions and you can raise your hand to ask your questions. So we want to, of course, first of all, start off by asking Onyame, the Nananom and Samantho, the Nananomabasum, to guide today's session, that they guide our presenter as he shares his work with us, and to help us to be receptive and to receive whatever lesson and message is intended for our own and the growth of those that around us. So we definitely want to bless this space with positive energy, loving energy. So with that being said, in the chat, as we're doing our introductions, I would love if you all could type in the chat some loving affirmations, some words of love to share with the group. So um, let's start adding that to the chat. Maybe it's a favorite proverb, maybe it's a favorite affirmation or saying that you have. Just something to continue to lift this wonderful energy that we've been having so far with the Akom Kese. And I see the greetings. So greetings again to everyone. So about our program tonight, we have Yao Tyus, who will be speaking, and his presentation is on creating a loving culture in our relationships. Yao Tyus, also known as Frank Love, is a loving husband, father of 5, speaker, podcaster, blogger, vlogger, and coach. He is the author of Relationship Conversations You Don't Want to Have, but Should Anyway, and 25 Ways to Be Loving. One divorce, a long spanning current marriage, and years of observing relationships has taught him much about the challenges that couples face around loyalty, trust, and partnerships. Believing that it's time we all start taking an honest look at what it means to be loving and how to implement those skills, Yao has embarked upon a fascinating journey to uncover and discover what it means to actively love and how to discern when we are not being loving. To learn more about Yao's work as Frank Love and what he's up to, you can visit him at frank-love.com, and I will also place that in the chat. So at this time, please feel free to continue adding in those loving affirmations and sayings and proverbs, and join me in welcoming Yao.
Thank you. And for the brothers, you can also, if you're interested, you can join me in a weekly call every Thursday that starts at 7 o'clock until 8:30, where we talk about issues that we work with and work through issues related to creating a more loving culture in our relationship. You can, I'll say it again at the end of the call, but you can log in to the call. This is a call at franksweeklycall.com. That's franksweeklycall.com. All brothers are welcome. Okay, this is, I was telling Quasi just a little while ago, this is an interesting experience for me because I don't really present in front of people that are as close to me as you all are. This is new. I'm used to speaking in front of strangers, and you know, I got that down. but this is a different look. So I mean, we'll have some fun, and I want to slightly revise the ground rules. Uh, I think that's what you called it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yes,
your mic is kind of staticky. I don't know if there's a way to make it a little bit more clear.
okay,
Is this any clearer?
That's better.
No mic is clearer than mic.
Actually, yes. If you just come
Okay.
a little bit closer to the computer and speak up just a little bit, that'll be perfect.
Oh, I could project. Okay. All right. All right. Was there any, did you hear what I said? Was
Yes,
it
we did. Yes, we did.
okay? Okay, so a slight revision to the ground rules. I would like it to be very interactive. I'm gonna go through some slides, but the slides are only a segment of the presentation. Most of the meat of what we're going to be doing is our interactions, comments, questions, that good stuff. So please don't wait for the end of the presentation to ask questions or to say your piece. Something you don't like, say something. Something you like, say something. But let's do this. Let's do this next 2 hours together. How's that? All right. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. So, creating a loving culture in our relationships. This is my crew. I'm a husband and father of 5. Can you hear? Are you all getting reception? So when I hear the beep of somebody clicking in, is it distorted on your end, or it doesn't? It doesn't bother you all at all?
They don't hear that.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'm a husband and father of 5. I was married to my first wife for about 10 years. Together, we parented 2 beautiful children, and my second wife, Hasana, and I have been married for 17 years. Together, we gave life to 3 beautiful children, and we co-parent 5. I'm also, as was already mentioned, I'm also the author of Relationship Conversations You Don't Want to Have, but Should Anyway. And my second book is 25 Ways to Be Loving. And we're certainly going to be talking about some of the content of that book in this presentation. I already mentioned that each week I host a Zoom call for brothers that's dedicated to creating a loving culture in our relationship. And yeah, franksweeklycall.com. Now, one of the things I say to everyone is I want to be loved and accepted in my relationship no matter what I do. And my experience tells me that you do too. You may have a hard time. You may have heard me say this before, for those of you who have been with me. But the power of this statement is in its simplicity and its truthfulness. We all have principles and reasons for doing the things that we want to do, and it can be easy to get lost in the weeds of reasoning. But when things get murky and challenging, one of the things that we can remind ourselves of is our partner's desire to be loved and accepted. And since we know this to be true of ourselves, we can also trust that it's true of our partners, if we know it to be true of ourselves. Now, one of the other things I often say is, as easy as I can tell you my name, I can tell you with confidence that I was not a good husband to my first wife. There are some questions that I did not know to ask myself, and definitely didn't ask myself, that left me ill-prepared to be a good husband to her. And because of my growth and understanding, I work to be a better husband every day to my current wife. I'm here to share my opinions. over the course of our time together. And I am not a therapist, social worker, attorney, or mental health professional. What are we about to be up to? We're about to talk about and identify, we're going to start by talking about and identifying some likely unloving behaviors and discuss how to replace them with loving behaviors. The intent for this is to be spirited, valuable, interactive, and fun. So let's get going. I hope to provide perspectives that will support you and your partner with creating a more loving culture in your relationship. Excuse the typo. A few of my beliefs. I'm responsible for the well-being of myself, my partner, and my entire world. There's more that I can do to improve my relationship. I may not know what it is, but a solution is undoubtedly right around the corner if I keep working to find it. And finally, we are one. My partner's pain is my pain. Her successes are my successes. And as I work to be loving in my relationship, I understand that if she's dealing with something, it's in our relationship. And so I'm dealing with it also, and there's no separation. All right, so I'm gonna give some, I'm gonna give some examples of some potentially unloving acts. And I want some feedback. Feedback is critical. I feed off of it. It's the only way we're gonna be successful. So how might the statement, ask your mother, if I say that to my children, how might that be problematic? Or in this capacity, we could say unloving. Anybody?
This is Amadama, and I would like to be able to be on camera, but the host took me off the camera and I sent him a message, but he didn't get it. So anyway, I think it's kind of, it puts mommy on the spot. It makes mother the heavy. And I experienced this with my parents, so I understand it clearly. My mother felt like my father was making her the heavy. She had the responsibility of disciplining us and making some of the decisions.
Perfect.
Because some of the things that he was dealt with when he was raised made him not want to be the disciplinarian, because he caught so many, he got beat up so much by so many different people. He didn't want to be the heavy, but she didn't really like being the heavy either. So he passed the buck more or less.
Perfect. Anyone else? I need one more person. Come on, somebody.
Hi.
Oh, okay.
This is Mommy Yaya. I put it in the chat, but it shows a level of disinterest in what's happening with the family.
Perfect.
And also, y'all, in the chat, Akom Kese in Wochua said it's dismissive. Akom Kuya Bakofua said it sounds harsh. And Rukia says that it's division instead of a united front. And then Omiloyan said, my mom felt like she had to be the bad parent.
This is great. You know how often I ask that question to an audience and people have no clue. So I appreciate everything that you all have thrown out there. Now, my experience with it is if my daughter, let's say AC, says, Daddy, can I go across the street to the store? And I say, ask your mother. I'm doing exactly what Auntie Amadama and what many have said. I'm making her the heavy, and not just that, and to be even more specific, I am making it clear that I am disinterested in whatever the outcome is. And if she says something that AC does not want to hear, it's clear that she is the root of AC's problem, instead of like it was said, the united front, where I could very well say something to the effect of, I'll let you know, or your mother and I'll talk, and I'll let you know whatever in the next few. When I do that, I am collaborating with my wife, number one, and I'm also making it clear I'm making it clear to my daughter that I'm invested, and I'm avoiding giving the landscape that says that it's up to your mother and you work it out with her. And if you got a problem with her decision, y'all work it out. That it doesn't matter to me. So, but you all basically nailed all of that. So nice. Okay, here's another one. My wife irritates me. Somebody, please weigh in. What could be the problem with a statement of this nature? And these types of statements, keep in mind, these are not statements that are rarely said. People say things like these like the first about the children, and here about your partner. Certainly it's not just about my wife. It could be a sister could be talking about her husband. And there are various ways of demonstrating irritation. Doesn't have to be specifically my wife irritates me. But what say you? How might this be unloving? Anything in the chat? Anything? Anybody?
Yes. Rakaya says, or Afiba, this is not in alignment with love. A problem must include a solution and action plan.
Okay. Anyone else?
Hi, this is Mommy Yaya again. I look at this as disinterest also, right? Because is she really irritating you? Did you tell her she was irritating you and why? Like, there's a lack of communication to me in this statement, and a lack of investment in trying to get rid of whatever the irritant is.
This is Amadama. When I see this, I think of the fact that we can't control things that are happening in our environment, but we can control how we choose to respond to it. And if she's doing something and he feels irritated, I think he needs to look at himself and say, well, why is this, is this a trigger? Why is this irritating me? Because a lot of times when something irritates a person, it's not the other person, it's something in the person who's being irritated. Something that may have happened in the past is being reignited or something like that.
Okay.
And in the chat, we have Akom Kese says, irritation is not associated as pleasant. It has a negative connotation. Abana Minus shares, it appears divisive. Kofi and Fojo Taya says, Kofi Taya says, it's nobody's business. We should listen with understanding.
All right. Okay.
Ms. Smith-Palcho, when you saying my wife irritates me, who is this being referred to? Are you saying this to somebody, or are you?
Yes. So yes, thank you.
Okay, so all right. So then, yeah, I agree. It's nobody's business. I mean, that's between you and your wife. She could irritate you, but I don't think it's proper for you to, yeah, just say my wife irritates me. Like, I think, yeah. So, I mean, she could possibly well be, but it's like telling your business. Is that okay for you to tell someone there? And then I guess, within saying that, I guess I would need to hear it in this full context. Like, is it just being done in a jokingly way, or is it really like, with some expletives, blah, 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 irritates me, type situation. So I guess I would need some more meat around it to really come to some fullness of judging that statement.
Okay. Anybody else before I weigh in? As far as I'm concerned, our primary responsibilities, or one of our definitive responsibilities, is to protect our partner. And when we speak ill of our partner to other people, it is definitely not protecting them. It's not reflecting, it's opening them up, possibly their reputation, and how people will perceive them to negative energy. And the real travesty is intimacy comes with vulnerability. If we are in a relationship with someone, and possibly married or a long-term relationship, whatever you want to call it, whatever the situation may be, we are going to know about each other's stuff. It goes hand in hand with being intimate. You cannot be intimate, or your degree of intimacy is directly related to how revealing you are, or how vulnerable you are. So as we become more vulnerable in our relationships, our partners know what our challenges are. They know what we're dealing with. And for them to speak ill of us elsewhere is to, in many ways, take advantage of and to misuse the very vulnerability that we share in an intimate relationship. Any comments there?
You have a comment in the chat. I think it's pretty good. It's a good statement.
Okay.
Which state you want to read it, Kwesi?
Yatewa Pukua. You may benefit personally and together with the person who makes the statement to explore the motivation and intent behind the blanket statement. If the statement is made to one's mentor or marriage counselor, then still it may not mean that the statement in and of itself is toxic or ill-intended. It may mean many more things, including a statement of need for help and support, or it could mean something else. Personally and professionally, I advise not to jump to conclusions on sound bites, a blanket statement. Lastly, before judging the statement, don't assume it's coming from a place of toxicity or negativity. So that's a mouthful, but I think it's a good statement.
I think it's perfectly well said. Thank you. And to weigh in on just that statement, one of the things that I work towards in my own relationship is to, let's say, advise myself, coach myself, to be able to check myself is a way of putting it, where there's a level of let's say assistance that we all need, depending on where we are in our relationship at a given period of time. Some of us may need to be counseled, advised every day. Some of us may gossip about our partners and be able to stay in our relationship because we have people to gossip to. I get it. We're all in different places. And the act of going to a therapist, advisor, counseling, and keep in mind, I coach, so I see this often. But one of the things I coach towards is avoiding these statements, eliminating statements of this nature completely. That is where, and another place is to avoid the need to actually require either a coach, an advisor, marriage counselor, any of that, because there are ways that we can talk to ourselves. There are questions that we can ask ourselves. There's statements that we can say to ourselves that resonate in the challenges that we may be having, where if we do it well enough and if we do it long enough, we work our way out of needing or wanting or feeling as though we have to have a third party that we have to talk to. Anyone? Okay.
Afiba shares that words have power. If there is a low vibration within the relationship that is not actively being corrected, then it's providing room for fear, resentment, and even more low vibrations.
Thank you, Afiba. All right. Biting back. This is one of those dynamics that I see as critical to get our arms around in order to be as loving as possible in our relationship. And so it's the way we respond to our partner, even when our partner is dealing with us in a way that we don't particularly like, is critical. We get to, one of the things that often happens is you yell at me, I yell back at you. And then you yell back at me. We keep escalating the situation. We ramp it up on one another. And we ultimately, it's ultimately a destructive cycle. And in contrast, we can instead figure out how to de-escalate a situation. So if my wife is having a bad day or having a bad moment, raises her voice at me, for me to raise my voice back at her, begins a dynamic it's a cycle that is, simply put, unloving, and it can really get out of hand depending on the two people who are in the conversation. Please, anyone, your thoughts?
I kind of agree with that statement in the sense that it's not necessary really to speak to your partner when you're angry or when you're not in a good state. So I think it's always better to have calmer heads prevail and then to have an adult conversation and not try to aim at hurting and just being emotional in your response.
Yeah, I agree. I call it moving from a place of love or acting from a place of love. So, in any given situation, being mindful enough, which I think is key, is to be mindful to take that step back to recognize where I am in a particular space, to remind myself, if needed, to speak, act, respond, or whatever from a place of love.
Anybody else? So I hate to be the only person here sharing my stories. And if anybody who has joined me on my calls, I share my stories quite a bit. So I want to know a situation where someone here may have responded and escalated the situation between their partners and themselves, and possibly a situation where someone has de-escalated the situation.
I'd like to say one thing, that if we could look at our relationships, whether it be our wife or friends or whatever, in a similar way, and you want them to express their feelings, and you listen with understanding, try to understand what they're saying, not react to it, but to appreciate the fact that they're telling you how they feel about something. You know, that's not saying you have to go along with it, but you do have to get to some understanding, a mutual understanding of each other. And like I said, that's what friends took, because a lot of friends can get on your nerves, you know, but the main thing is that you get to a point where you understand where they're coming from. So you don't have to keep going through it, because that's them.
Thank you. Anyone else? A story. Okay. The next, I don't want to discuss it. Does this resonate with anyone? Anybody have a clear or a understanding of how this may be a problem?
Yes, because if it's an issue for the person that wants to discuss it, you're dismissing their feelings. It sounds like it may be important to you, but I don't care.
Indeed.
Or it's too deep. I don't want to get into it. So.
But I mean, if I tell my wife I don't want to discuss it, and I mean I don't want to discuss it, let's revisit this at another time. So if I'm in a state where this is not a good time to have that discussion, my wife needs to respect that I don't want to discuss it at this point. So and then we go back and forth. We talk about just having a mutual respect. So my wife needs to recognize that, okay, you know what? Gracie's not in a good mood right now, and you know what, we can revisit this. But that also comes with a matter of respect. But it's like you're demanding me to speak to you right now because you want to discuss it. Nah, I'm not with that.
I think also though, with the statement as it is, I don't want to discuss it. It kind of stops right there, and there's no continuation of I don't want to discuss it now. Let's discuss it later. And I think adding, Quay, to your point, I think adding that to this statement, I think changes the way.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Anyone else?
I was going to say, I agree with the previous two comments, but I also, I think respect is giving courtesy to the person who is ready to talk and maybe putting a time limit on it. So not like I don't want to discuss it and we're not going to talk about it until I'm ready, but maybe like revisiting it within 24 hours or revisiting it, in a reasonable amount of time. So it's not like that other person is having to deal with withholding or, keeping their emotions in when they really need to, work it out or want to fix it.
Exactly.
You didn't imply, or did you, that you resolved the problem right then and there?
You're saying I did not
imply that we have to come to some agreement right here and now.
I am not, right. I'm not implying that.
Yeah. Okay. Because what's important is that a person be able to express themselves and what's important to them. And then you can think about it and then talk about it when, after you give it some thought.
Indeed. Okay. Anyone else?
I think this is a situation of context, as people were saying before. I agree with the other statements as well, but sometimes it really is about giving me space. And sometimes when people say I don't want to discuss it, other stuff has already been said, and I'm trying to ask you for space, and you're not allowing me the space because you're thinking about what you need to get off your chest. Mm-hmm. So I think it's critical for people to know where they're at that point in time. Yes, we can choose language a little differently so that people are not put off, but sometimes people got to give others space or things can really get out of hand.
Indeed.
And I think then that adds to like the need for communication, like how people communicate with each other so that that can be stated. But then I guess also being in the place, like mentally to know to say all those things. And I guess developing the relationship in such a way where the other person knows how to receive it. So it's like creating this culture of understanding that within the relationship, so that if someone says, hey, we've talked about this, I don't really want to discuss it right now, let's give it 24 hours. And then the other person also being able to receive that and not feeling like it's some type of slight. So I think it requires maturity on both ends in terms of respect and communication, I think.
Yes, I would agree too. I found that sometimes when they tell you, I don't want to discuss it, they're actually at points saying, and don't bring it up later. Don't, this is the end. I don't want to say no more about it. I don't want you to bring it back. So I think, again, we have to be respectful to everyone's input into their relationship, that it's not one-sided, that the one person is not the law over how this family or the relationship will work.
I think there's a very big difference between I don't want to discuss it and I don't want to discuss it at this time. There's a very big difference. If a person doesn't want to discuss it at the moment, sometimes timing is significant. And if you're both angry, or if it's going to be an argument, you may want to postpone it until a time when you're level-headed and you can think clearly without, having a blowout. But just saying I don't want to discuss it sounds like you don't ever want to discuss it.
And that is that really gets to the heart of the statement, that it's cutting off the communication. What I've seen when an individual has made a statement of this nature is they're saying, I don't want to communicate about it anymore. And that I have not seen one time where that results in something positive. It could go a multitude of ways. The easy opposites are, you could say, I don't want to discuss it anymore, and the person goes off and does something that you don't want them to do. They respond in a way that's adverse to you, or that you have a problem with, that you have an even bigger problem with than talking about it. Or they keep it in and the issue continues to fester and seethe, and it doesn't go away until it blows up way down the road. And those blow ups down the road, who knows where they could be? They could be within the person. It could be in our children. Who knows? But pain and a desire and a willingness to communicate does not at all, it doesn't disappear. It must be resolved. It must be addressed. And so, as has basically been said already, we get to, if we don't want to have a conversation right now in the moment, we get to say, can we talk about this later? And sometimes it's not about what we want. We may have a limitation in terms of, we may be at work. We may be in the middle of doing something. It could not just be an emotional not wanting to, it could be like other forces at play. So instead of just, I don't want to talk about it, we get to share, I don't want to talk about it right now, but as you all said, let's talk about it a little later, maybe when I get off work, or can I get 24 hours to think about this? And then you all even get a chance to negotiate that, because your partner may say, 24 hours is too much time for me. I want to talk about it sooner. Can we talk about it in 4 hours? And y'all get to negotiate that. It's no one in an ideal situation, and what I would consider a healthy situation, no one will use the emotional leverage of saying that they just can't, or having a blow up that prevents them from engaging with their partners, because we are in each other's world and we must demonstrate that we care about each other at all times. Any comments there?
Yes. Oh, I thank you. I just was thinking another part too is that we don't want to, like I think what you just said about even make it a worse situation, because if you keep hammering at them that I want to talk now, and then it just creates a fireball, and then it like goes out of hand. So yeah, still have to look at when to finally talk about it, and then I guess finding. Maybe you need a mediator or something to get between to help you guys to hear each other's side about whatever the situation is, if it gets to be that big.
Thank you. Someone else?
I just have a quick comment. This is Andrea Amoa. I think a lot of it has to also do with your development as an individual and also knowing your partner. I know when Quasi and I first started, we've been married over 20 something years. And when we first started, I'm an alpha female and he's an alpha male. So for me to show him any type of deference when he said he didn't want to talk about it, it was an issue for me because I wanted to talk about it and I want to talk about it now. So I think everybody made good points, but in order to get to that point, I think you need to know yourself in addition to knowing your partner. That way you'll know when you can show the other partner deference, and you'll know when to approach certain things with the individual and when to step back. And in turn, he'll know the same. So I think everybody had good points, but I think it also circles around knowing yourself and knowing your partner as well.
Well, what you said also touches on the culture part where and you didn't directly say it, but you alluded to it, where if you begin to show a certain characteristic or certain trait in dealing with your partner, perhaps he will begin to develop a similar trait in his dealings with you. That's a big deal around the culture of our relationships. And while you're here, Andrea, tell so where did you
really? Yeah, really.
what say a little.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to discuss
it. Until when?
All right, give me 24 hours. 24 hours.
Okay. All right. Okay.
How about until I've had something to eat? Because I know if I haven't eaten, I'm not going to have the same response to a conversation until after I've had, some nourishment. So sometimes timing, like I said, timing is important. Let's talk about this after dinner.
That's real.
I'm about to say something real biased real quick. There was a movie that I saw one time, and I swear that this works for me. So what the woman had said in the movie is that the man is the head of the household. He is the head, but the woman is the neck, and she can make the head turn any which way she wants. And I swear, when I heard that, it was a light bulb, and instantly I figured it all out. Time and place for everything. You have to know your partner, know how to approach things, know when to approach things, and you'll ultimately get what you want. Isn't that right, baby?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm back to you, Andrea.
Yeah.
All right. Give us a story.
There's so many.
Pick one.
Let's see.
That's when I upped your insurance. So they had asked for
dang.
the beneficial.
I don't even know. Okay. Here's a story. I had if I have a bad day at work, and this happened last week, my job is very, very stressful. And when I come home, one of the things he wants to do, he wants to talk about it. How was your day? And if I say, oh, my day was crap, I don't want to talk about it. Well, why don't you want to talk about it? Because I dealt with sexual abuse of a child. I don't want to talk about it. And for him, he feels that maybe if I talk about it, it might take down some of my anxiety and some of my stress level. But that doesn't work. And he finally realized that when I come home and he says, well, how was your day? And I say, I don't want to talk about it. He gets it. He understands it. And the fact that he's not questioning me about it or trying to fix it makes me open up, like maybe 3 hours later. Let me tell you about this case. So, again, he's learned how I am. And just by him learning how I am, that gives me, the ability to open up and discuss certain things when I am ready, not when he's ready, because he wants to fix the situation.
Beautiful. Can the community that's on the line, we got 45 people here. Can the community, particularly those in relationships, can somebody come with another story of how you stop talking, how you continue talking, how you keep the communication going? I can't, I don't know who's, yeah, I can't see everybody. I can't call anybody out. Let me see. I don't want to call anybody out. So I'm gonna leave it there. If anybody wants to come back to that, you're very welcome to do so. Moving right along. Is that all right, Andrea?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's fine. I'm at work right now.
Okay. All right, no time. This is an interesting one, and this is a big deal. Anyone familiar with the 5 love languages?
Yes.
I am.
Yes.
All right. So would somebody spit them? There are 5 of them, clearly. Would you share them, please?
I don't know them offhand. Touch is one. Touch is one.
Acts of
Mhm.
Sound is
service.
one.
Acts of service, yeah. Quality time.
Sound is one. Some people have to hear it.
Gifts is another one, I think. Gifts.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes, husband. Tell them all.
I don't know. Touch, gifts, service. I think somebody said service, right?
If someone's typing in the chat, quality time, words of
Yeah.
affirmation,
Words
gifts,
of affirmation. Words of affirmation.
words of affirmation.
Yep.
So we have quality time, words of affirmation, gifts, touch.
Acts of service. Okay.
Thank you, Abba Manu.
Okay. Now, if it's one thing that is common amongst all 5 of those, and you know, that's one man's research. It's quality research and it's serious work. I had the pleasure of interviewing him some years ago, and his work is, I mean, it's good stuff. Yet that is there's the one thing that's common in all of those is time. In order to be effective at any of those things, physical touch, gifts, words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, in order to be effective, we must dedicate time to doing those things. And many of us live in a world where we have no time, where I mean, that's the prevailing sentiment. There's not enough time in a day. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for this. But our partners are, if not the most important person in our world, they're one of the most important people in our world. And if anything or anyone deserves our time, in my humble estimation, it's our partners. Now, can I get someone other than Kwesi and Andrea who is in a long-term relationship to come to the floor to speak up, please, pretty please.
Everybody's.
Yeah.
It's a tough audience, bro. What's up?
Tough, right.
I'm here, y'all. This is Afiba. I'm here.
This is Afiba. Hey, okay.
Hey.
This is Afiba, my age Afiba that I grew up with?
Yes, yes.
All right. Okay. Are you familiar with the 5 love languages?
I am.
Okay. My question to you is, which one are you focusing on right now as it pertains to your husband?
I feel like we move in and out of them. So around his birthday, around an anniversary, it's about gifts. It can be touch all the time. It can be time all the time. It can be, I feel like we move in and out of the 5 languages.
Okay. And okay, so in terms of today, let's say we're just looking at today. I'm assuming, and mind you, I'm making a jump, admittedly, I'm assuming your husband doesn't work nights. He's not at work right now. Is that accurate? And that you're not at work right now, meaning you all are in each other's space. Hello?
I was muted again and didn't realize it.
Okay.
So I worked all day and then I came upstairs and I'm on this Zoom. So I haven't been really present.
Okay.
Today.
I mean, I'm kind of getting at, you'll see each other tonight.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, all right. And in that, in the time when you interact tonight, what is the intentional act of service that you will dedicate time to?
Oh, I'm not sure I know how to respond to that question.
I understand. And so
Probably,
Mhm.
probably acts of service or words of affirmation. We're both big on words of affirmation. I had to look up the 5 love languages to have the exact verbiage, but probably acts of service and words of affirmation.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I have been challenged with in my own relationship is asking myself that very question. Because if we intend to be intentional about something, it comes with, I mean, there's some real basic clarity that we get to have. And so if you were to ask me that question and I don't know what I'm working on or what I'm focusing on that is going to be meaningful to my wife, it's pretty, I consider it a given that I'm not focusing on that. I mean, it has to be, and for me, it has to be intentional. I have to be clear that it's something that I'm doing or I want to do or intending to do or working on before I'm actually doing it at the level and the quality that will be meaningful to her. And so the overarching point that I'm getting towards, if I haven't gotten there yet, is we must make time for each other. We must make time for each other if we intend to have a loving impact on our partners. Anyone want to say anything about that?
Something I would like to say, the last 3 slides spoke, I kept feeling or thinking the same thing. We tend to conform for work, and there's certain things we would never say to an employer, right? So the amount of meetings that I have at my office that I have no desire to have and I would prefer have later, I still don't say to my colleagues, I'm not discussing this, we'll do this later. And I feel like it's the people that we love or the people that are closest to us, whether it's friends, whether it's partners, we commonly do things to them that we kind of expect may be tolerated. And so we don't do those things at work. We're humble, we bite our tongue. These are things that we commonly should do for the people that we love as well, but we don't. And so in hearing like the last few slides that you, like the one that you, I forget the wording now, but it felt, or I heard it very dismissive, even though I heard a lot of people saying, oh, you would do it later and I just felt like it was a dismissive statement. And these are things that we would not say to an employer or to someone who we thought would give up on us or not be tolerant of it. But our loved ones are the ones that we do these things to. So I think if you think of it in that sense, that this is not something that I would do to someone who I don't care about, why would I do this to someone who I do care about?
Extremely well said. And I would say we don't, it's not even necessarily that we wouldn't do it to someone that we don't care about. We just don't, we're not as close to those individuals as we are to the people who we live with, we've given birth to, we're married to, those sorts of things. It's a very different level of closeness and intimacy, presumably. Anyone else?
I'm sorry, it's interesting because I see it in children as well. Children will treat their parents differently than they will their teachers or other, the same 5-year-old that'll be sassy or rude to their parents will be very polite and respectful to outsiders. So it's something that, I mean, ideally we'll be respectful and to everyone, but there's definitely a comfort zone that comes with that lack of respect.
And does anyone else want to weigh in? The concept of dismissiveness is so huge. I'm going to come on camera. There's so many there's so many ways of being dismissive in our relationship. One of the things that I have done is a scowl, like, or even a huff. That's like, we got to deal with this again, or just flat out saying, this again. I mean, there's so many different ways of being dismissive in our relationship. And it is absolutely critical that instead of being dismissive, that we're affirming, that we are letting our partners know what matters to you matters to me. And the simple fact that it's coming out of your mouth, or the simple fact that you have either you have some issue with something, or there's something that you would like to see happen, that's enough for me to give it respect and weight, and to figure out how I can help you be successful in whatever it is you're envisioning. Anyone want to say anything about that?
So we have a comment in the chat from Yasirwa. She says, we must have different boundaries and different relationships in our lives. The boundaries will and should not be the same across each area of our involvement. Boundaries are basically what I am trying to explain. Even boundaries are structured on different levels with different, it's involving different people and relationships. We have, so basically she's talking about boundaries and different boundaries depending on the circumstance.
Okay. Anyone want to say anything about that? And please keep in mind, folks, you don't have to type in the chat. Just come off, just talk.
Yes.
This,
come off.
This is meant to be interactive. Nana Kwabena, please, I see you here. I really, my respect to you, significant respect to you. Is there anything you want to say here?
Just in terms of something that said, one of the things in terms of what we're talking about is really starting to look at the relationship as a team. If we develop the team concept, and with the team concept, in our discussions and interactions, nobody wins unless the team wins.
Absolutely.
And so, we're always try to keep things on a positive level, and then, make every effort to use some really good communication skills. I mean, that's it. Using communication skills. It can never be about winning or losing, and it really has to be about the relationship coming out on top. I call the relationship the third person in the room. There's you, there's your partner, and there's a relationship, and all three have got to win.
Absolutely. There's a video that I recently watched, and it was what's his name? Usain Bolt is like considered the fastest man in the world, and I don't know if he's just considered that. He's probably that. And he's able to run a 100, and don't quote me on the numbers, but he's able to run a 100 in like 9 seconds. However, when he is on the relay team and they're running a 400, the team in and of itself is able to run a 400 in 32 seconds. Now, you do the math, 9 times 4, the fastest man in the world, if that's if that's multiplied 4 times, then it'll be 36 seconds. But the fastest man in the world, when he partners with 3 other people, they are able to run the race at a much faster speed that he could duplicate 4 times. I see that as quite incredible, and it's quite relevant to relationships and us being successful. And I consider it synergy when, like you said, the relationship has a life of its own, and it's a positive it's a positive where it's not just, it has a life of its own that's destructive, but one that is positive and good for both people involved. Everybody wins. Anyone else?
So yeah, I like to have a question in terms of relationships and in terms of relationships with the understanding of the culture. Could you speak of that in terms of, you know, creating and generating a loving environment from a cultural perspective? So the majority of people on this call are all involved with the Akan culture in some form or fashion. So how do our relationships intersway into that from a cultural perspective? And then what was our cultural relationships like before we got to this country? So I know it's kind of taking you off topic a little bit, but I think that would be interesting, you know, from your perspective.
Okay, so pick one first, because I think you asked either 2 or 3 questions. So
You
which
pick
one?
whichever one you feel is your pleasure.
All right. And so what I heard you say was, well, one of the questions I heard you ask was the relevance with creating a loving culture and our relationships to the people who are in the culture. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the biggies is the divorce rate. I mean, I'm divorced. My parents divorced. Most of the people who I grew up with, or I mean, many of the individuals that are in the culture have been divorced. And if there's anything I'd like for the participants on this call, the individuals on this call, to take away from this conversation, is that there's loving each other is an action. It's not just being in love is one thing. That's you can put that in one category.
European love, then, right?
Okay, I don't even know what category. Just being in love, we'll put that in its own place. I don't know what it is called, where to categorize it. But loving each other, being loving to one another at any given moment, in every given moment in time, is a very different thing. And it requires us to ask hard questions of ourselves. And the easy hard question is, am I being loving in this moment? I mean, that's an easy question to ask. And it may very well be hard to give yourself an honest answer. And it certainly has been for me. And so as we raise our children, as we go into relationships, as we nurture or exist in the relationships that we're in, I really am asking that each of us promote it in each other, and promote, when I say each other, I mean me, promote it in you, but also that we promote it within our relationships. So in other words, let's create a better world, and starting with how we deal with our partners. And that certainly touches on the culture, because ultimately, I think we are all in this, or all of us want to create a better world.
So from a historical perspective and from a cultural perspective, what would you think, how do you think or feel those relationships were culturally?
In terms of my history?
No, not you specifically. I'm talking about from our culture, between a man and a woman and all that type of stuff from a cultural perspective. What did that look like? What do you think it looked like? And then is there anything that we can learn from that to bring into our present in terms of our relationships in this day and time? So you mentioned one thing about divorce rates, and we have a lot of high divorce rate. Is that just a function of us being here in America, or was that something that's historically noted in our culture? I know they have divorces in a cultural setting as well. So I'm asking you, from your perspective, what do you think that looked like from a cultural perspective in terms of loving relationships?
I don't have a full, I can't get my arms around that completely where I'm safe, where I feel comfortable weighing in on it, going back historically hundreds, thousands of years. I'm not there. What I just am working with in the work that I do, what I'm working with as I communicate with you all right now, is one around being as honest with ourselves as possible so that we can check ourselves and so that we can do the best job taking care of our partners and taking care and promoting a culture where they take care of us.
Can I speak to something that I've heard some young brothers in relation
Absolutely.
to what Kwesi was just speaking of? A brother recently, he was, I guess you could call him a player, and he was talking about how initially when he was in the dating scene, his goal was hunting women and on a hunter and prey type hunting women. So the women were his prey, he would get them and then that was it. But there was no real interest in a relationship. And then when he met his wife, he realized that his goal shifted in that his goal became his desire to build with someone. In the same way that you mentioned that synergistic or teamwork method. And when I think of matriarchal society prior to a lot of how we live now, the goal was building. I mean, even the idea of polygamy, it was most often more women to men so that there would be more children, so that you could build. So you'd have more people for the farm and you'd have more people for the home and you'd have more workers. And so the mindset of building shifted to a more hunter-prey dynamic in our new way of living. And so it seems that because, I mean, yes, men now, like he said, this player, quote unquote player, changed his way. And when he realized that he wanted a woman that he wanted to build with, his whole, the way he did things changed. But I think that was one of the initial ways in how families, when I look at family in Ghana, if I look at family in the Caribbean, I mean, yes, you have the polygamy aspect, and sometimes it's not quite polygamy where it's the man with multiple women, but ideally, I think the initial goal in that was the importance of building the home and building the farm and having your compound. And so I think that that's still something that is necessary in our community.
One of the things that it's interesting that you're bringing that up because 2 weeks ago, I speak about this call that I do with the brothers, but 2 weeks ago, we did a call where we were talking about brothers' experiences with multiple women, attempting to, and having a relationship with multiple women at one time. And it was a spirited call, to say the least. And one of the things a few of the things that we seem to agree on is in this culture, polygamy and working to nurture relationships with multiple women doesn't work. And I can weigh in there where it has not worked for me. I have not seen it work in a way that I'm interested in duplicating. And there's been a lot of pain, hurt. Those, you can add the descriptive associated with that. So that comes to mind when you're speaking of the family building. And in this particular culture, one thing that I say when we're talking about polygamy or even women on the side or whatever, however you want to call it or whatever the situation may be, it takes a good relationship with one woman in order to have a good relationship with two. And many of the brothers, we miss that. We're so interested in having two women that we forget the opportunity, and we lose sight of it's more important to have a solid relationship with one woman before attempting to have a solid relationship with two. Because if you lose the one because you got the second one, you're still back to one. And also, and add to that is just it's a no fun life to have two miserable people right around you, because they're gonna make you miserable too. Anyone? The floor is open. Anybody want to weigh in on where we're going with this?
I don't think anybody has mentioned this yet, but there are different worldviews about relationships. I think in America, a lot of people have the soap opera notion of relationship. You know, I'm going to fall in love with me, he's going to fall in love with me, and we're going to live happily ever after. But we don't necessarily think about the relationship with oneself and how developed the individual is. So if two sick people come together, you get the synergy of sickness. You get pathology on top of pathology. And then if the person is trying to bring in another person and they're sick, because we're sick, you know, for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
In this society, if we're not sick, something's wrong with us, because so much has happened to us that if we're not damaged, then I'm wondering, well, how did you manage to grow up in America and not be damaged? But anyway.
If we don't know we got a problem, we got a bigger problem.
Exactly. That's where I'm coming from. So I don't think we spend enough time necessarily looking at ourselves and what we're bringing to the table. And many of us have self-esteem issues. Many of us have, you know, we might be egotistical or selfish. You know, there's some of us that are narcissistic and we think it's all about me, not about us. And so I think the level of development of the individual is very significant in how successful the relationship is going to be. And we have to, I think, at some point, understand that we can grow together, but we also need to be growing as individuals so that when we come together, we can be stronger together. I think that's an important piece.
And our relationship together can be a reflection, and we can learn about ourselves based on what comes up in our relationship.
Yeah, they say relationships are like a mirror.
Yes.
And we tend to get what we reflect. You know, a lot of times we attract what we are.
Indeed. Anyone else? All right, so I'm gonna go to the chat and pull out a few, just pull out a few people. Abner Bryn Poem.
Yeah.
What you had to say about what we've been chatting about?
It all sounds great. I mean, which part? About the very last part?
Anywhere you want to jump in.
It's so much, I don't know, pick something out. I don't know, it's just so much. It's just so much. I agree with a lot, but yeah.
On the screen, no time. You creating time? Do you create conscious, purposeful time for your partner?
Yeah, yeah, well, we have our balance. There's things that he's good at, there's things that I'm good at. So one of the things is that he's more good at actually the time and like date night and all that stuff. And then there's other things that I balance out on that, you know what I mean, that may not be on his radar.
Okay. Anyone else? Anybody want to jump in before I volunteer someone to respond to me?
Pacho, this is Nana Kwesi Ajman. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Welcome.
Okay. Hi, it's been a great discussion. I've enjoyed a lot of it. And I just wanted to make up a couple of comments. I'm not going to talk about polygamy because I think that's a call in and of itself. But I think what Ahmad Damas said is correct, is that there's different worldviews on relationships. And we tend to impose our perspective from here on somebody else's institution or another institution. And I think that creates its own obstacles and challenges. But what Kwesi Amoah said earlier, I think if you want to compare the value of the culture I think it's what Kwesi said, and I think also Amadama said, is we're looking at improving ourselves. The whole exercise of embracing African culture, Akan culture, and understanding the history and the people and the cultures that are part of our legacy is so that we can sort of remediate some of the damage that's been done to us through our interactions through the past few centuries. And sometimes we're not even aware of what the damage has been, but still we're hopeful that going back, we can go back and reclaim some of the strengths that the culture provides for us. So much that we talk about, particularly in terms of the Proverbs, and almost everything about the culture and the institutions of society, the family structures, the chieftaincy, all of that is about relationships. All of the oral tradition is about relationships. It's all about the rules that society has put in place that are part of our heritage, that some of it we are alien to us now, or how we maintain relationships, because it's all about good character. It's about the morality of the man or the woman or the child, and how they behave and how they interact with society and how they treat their elders and how they treat their husbands and how they treat their wives and how they recognize God. Everything is about who you are as a person and how you live in a society. And that society is nothing but a network of relationships. So everything that I've heard in the past 20 minutes or half hour has sort of circled around that basic concept. And I think that's what Kwesi was getting at when he was saying, how does it, how does the culture that we're pursuing, how does that affect, how does that interact with the subject of the relationships we're talking about? And I think it hit the nail right on the head, because so much of our lives and so much of our beliefs and so much of our energy and so many of the sacrifices that we make in terms of trying to understand this culture and live in this culture and perpetuate this culture and spread this culture is so that other people can have their legacy that will improve their lives. And that improvement is a way of having different relationships. So maybe young men will find ways to work together and not shoot each other or kill each other. But people will find ways to make money without selling drugs or having prostitution. Maybe we can find ways that each of those individuals will have a different relationship with somebody that will lift them up instead of drag them down. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're doing. So I think it's really a very salient conversation. But I see.
Hello, this is Nanencia. This is a good place to interject and build on Nana Kwesi. We seem to run in the same circles oftenly, maybe because we're in that same age bracket. But yeah, the question was asked again, Kwesi, regarding how does this tie into his culture? And Yao, even though you may not have considered it back, your points and your premise of your conversation is really historically grounded according to the Proverbs. And you know, as Nana Kwesi was pointing out, the Proverbs, talk about its relationships. For example, there's one proverb that says, a wife is like a woolen blanket. If you cover yourself with it, it irritates you. And yet if you take it away, you feel cold. And what this particular proverb means is marriage has its ups and downs, joys and sorrows, and it takes wisdom to maintain the balance between the two. And you talked about that, earlier in terms of what you're doing. So there was respect. There are proverbs that talk about the respect that the man has for the woman has for the man. There's proverbs that talk about the love and relationships amongst people and how people are grounded in those relationships. So all the things, even though they sound like today, modern things that we've come to understand, they're really grounded on our ancestors and they're grounded on this Proverbs. So, we're in the ballpark, whether you know it or not, so, and there are definitely Proverbs that support what it is. They say a woman is a flower in the garden and her husband the fence around it. This proverb alludes to the responsibilities of men to protect women. And, so you're there. You are definitely well-grounded in terms of what the Proverbs are. And I'll share with you some of these. You can include them in your next talk. Thank you.
Now, I'm curious, did you just look these Proverbs up or you had them ready?
Well, you know what? I don't have enough time to
Cynthia,
follow up, right? And
don't answer that. Don't answer that.
don't answer it?
Don't answer that.
Okay, I will.
Yeah,
I was going to answer
no,
it.
don't answer that. Just
Everything
you
is
said it.
divinely
We
guided.
heard it.
Huh? All I was going to say
So
that.
just let's all assume you have to. You
All I
just
was going
assume she had wisdom and she shared it with us.
He got it. Yes. All right. All right.
I did want to say though, Nana Kwesi, I do have to say that everything is divinely guided. So, you know, he can answer it himself when I say that. Everything is divinely guided. He knows the answer to that question himself. Everything is divinely guided. Thank
All
you.
right. Who
True,
else?
true, true. I'm fine.
Anyone else? Okay, another concept I'd like to chat about is and introduce is the concept that just simply says you matter. It builds on what we've been talking about around dismissiveness, and dismissiveness runs it runs very deep. It can be very quiet. It doesn't have to. It can. There's aggressive. There's passive aggressive. So, but one of the challenges that I have wrestled with and that I've seen many wrestle with is just a simple concept that relates to your partner at all times. You matter. You're important to me. Instead of rolling your eyes, instead of this again, instead of all of the dismissive things that we've already discussed, being able to say and demonstrate in your actions, you matter to me, and your disposition matters to me. What you want matters to me. How you receive what I'm saying matters to me. You matter. Please, anyone want to chat about that? Or anyone have any feedback on that?
I think inherent in that statement is the level of sacrifice that's needed for a successful relationship. In other words, it's not all about me and my ego. If I care about you, then you have to be important to me. It's not just what I want, but I care about what you want and what you need. You know, a lot of us grew up with the so-called golden rule, but I like when I heard about the platinum rule. I think that's even better because the golden rule says that you treat people the way you want to be treated, but your partner may not want to be treated the way you want to be treated. So we talked about the 5 love languages. I think it's important to recognize and understand what your partner needs so that you can have the platinum rule and treat your partner the way your partner wants to be treated, and understand that what you need and what you want may be different than what the other person needs and wants. And that's something that came up earlier in the discussion when people were talking about, I think Andrea was saying, you know, she grew to learn Kwesi and Kwesi grew to learn her. So they understood each other, they understand each other. And that's very important. Take the time to recognize what the other person, you know, what the other person's perspective is or what their values are.
Anyone else?
I thought the golden rule was he who has the goal makes the rule.
That's Kwesi's golden rule.
Sure is.
This is Akom Kese. I like to weigh in. You can hear me?
Absolutely.
So when you talk about the concept of you matter, my immediate thought is that this was for me, I'll own it for myself, was a learned behavior because for many of us, all of us as people of African descent, living in a white supremacist society, we're unconsciously negated. Our thoughts are negated, our very presence is negated. I had to learn that my feelings matter, my opinions matter, and that was something that was really important for me to learn in my own marriage. But it was something that I had to learn within myself, knowing myself first, before I can contribute whole in a relationship. So I just want to raise that from the perspective of really understanding our value in this white supremacist society where we're consciously and unconsciously being negated and ignored as people of African descent, and having to be consciously aware. Maybe it's something that people already knew, you were taught that, or it's just innate. For me, it was I had to really consciously learn that behavior that I matter.
Yeah, I'd like to just add a little something to that. along with that statement is really, valuing yourself and also validating our partners. And getting into the understand we don't have to agree with somebody. At the same time, we can value their right to say what they have to say. We can value them. We can disagree with them, but still value them as a person, as a human being. And really be able to say that. Well, I disagree with you, but I respect your right to say that. I respect your right to feel that way. Validation.
Indeed. Anyone else? To piggyback on what has been said related to in many ways affirmation, the concept was introduced by someone, I forget who it was, minutes ago, around boundaries. And my experience has challenged me to remove the boundaries that many of us believe to be important. And while I respect the wisdom that people tend to rely on when creating boundaries, I found them to be counterproductive. And the reasoning is, when we create a boundary, let's say we're creating a wall around a given issue, it's removing the sensitivity. We're creating something and saying, I won't budge around this. But it's removing the dynamic, the interaction between the two people. And it not just that, but it also, there's a way of, it goes back to what we were talking about early, when we don't want to talk about something, where we end up eliminating the interplay between the two. And a boundary with one person in one scenario may not be necessary with another person in another scenario. And when we create boundaries, we're kind of we're cutting off our ability to communicate and be sensitive. That usually is there are a lot of people who don't agree with me on that, and I'm certainly interested in hearing what anyone has to say. Abida Manu, did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did. Abinamianu. Good night.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. You notice I'm hitting the A's, so I haven't gotten down in my list yet. Any thoughts? Any thoughts on what we've talked about this evening?
I definitely agree with a lot of the comments. It's interesting trying to, especially for someone like myself who wasn't born into the culture of Akom, to really begin to embrace the culture and have to also kind of work through the things that have been ingrained over decades, not really realizing it until you're starting to come into a space of knowing yourself. That within itself is a lot of work. And then now to apply it to relationships, whether they're romantic or within your family, how to create those boundaries, how to have healthy conversations, and stay in tune and in sync spiritually. It's a lot of work, and it takes time. And I feel that sometimes because of our upbringing and our experiences here, we don't give ourselves the space or the grace to be able to take the time, whether it's with ourselves or within our families and how we interact with each other, to realize that not only are we healing, we're literally rewriting the code of how we present ourselves and who we are. That's challenging to do. You're learning, you're unlearning, and you're really trying to present yourself as who it is that you want to be, as your best self. So I definitely agree with everything that has been shared. But one of the things I haven't heard us talk about is the grace that's required in those relationships to make sure that that success continues. I've heard a lot of discussion on respect, but we got to give ourselves and each other grace as well.
Absolutely. And you were going to hold that back from us. You just gave us, you weren't going to jump in and say that. Okay.
Well, Paulo, but Madasi for bringing it out. I'll give you the props.
Okay. All right, I'll take it. Oh, Mama Nikishi. She's out. Mama Nikishi. All right. I jumped down to the ends. Mama Nikishi, what do you have to say? Yes.
I don't think you want to hear anything I have to say.
I want to hear everything you got to say.
I'm here to listen and learn. I've had 3 not successful scenarios, shall we say. So I am here to listen and learn with open ears. And I appreciate you, Baba Yao, for everything that you've been doing over the years and imparting your wisdom to the young and the elder alike. So I'm all ears. Keep going.
Is there anything you've heard that resonates?
Oh, well, everything resonates. I mean, I love the 5 love languages. I first actually learned that from one of Nana Kwabana's workshops years ago. I've liked everything that I've heard. I see a question in the chat that I'd like to
put it on the chat, huh?
Yeah, but it's all good. Now just keep going. I'm listening.
Okay. Would somebody tell me what's in the chat?
It's a question about dating apps. Just curious as to what your response to that is.
Can somebody read it to me?
So what is your opinion about dating apps? I have met many people who use them always, and for the life of me, I do not understand how the risk of finding a partner via an app is less important than the deep desire to find love. I know that there are people who have met and married and it worked for them, but in this Western American culture day and age, what is your Akan culture perspective on use of dating apps?
Honestly, I'm not a dating person. That's not my purview. I never had problems getting a date. I talk about the things that I'm challenged with. So I never had problems getting a date, and the dating world, all of that. So I would have to punt to somebody else. Kwesi, you got to answer. I don't know anything about dating apps.
So the question is, from a culture perspective, whether or not we should be using dating apps or something. Could you elaborate on your question, sis?
So do you want to come off of mute and share a couple of your points?
Hi. So we have children who are millennials. They are the future of the world that we live in. And they have ways and ideas that seem to be unique to that generation. And for those who are in the culture or even want to be in the culture, this platform here right now is about relationships. So, I'm just curious to know, we're talking about how to maintain them, all those things. I'm curious to know, when we're dealing with people who are close to us, that we interact with all the time, who may even be in the culture, right? And that is a part of their lifestyle. My question is only, what is your opinion as a relationship coach about that platform or that outlet of mate selection, and so on? So that I was just curious about the opinion. I'm clear about mine. I was just curious to present that to, everyone here?
Well, I mean, this is Kwesi Moore. So my opinion is one, I mean, because we live in this society and we live here, so many things are bastardized from my understanding, and any of the elders is more than free to correct me. You had arranged marriages and you had arrangements of people coming together that created business opportunities for family. So from a cultural perspective, we don't do that at all. I mean, it's all about you like a boy, you like a girl, you like each other in terms of checking out the family, seeing their lineage, making sure this person meshes with you and the family. From in this society, we don't do this. So as from a cultural perspective, as being here, so how can we do that? And it's really kind of tough because we are in the belly of the beast and we all are worried about how to survive and how to do the things that we need to do to help and perpetuate our culture. Ideally, it would be nice for all of us that are culturally minded to get together, do things together, and allow our children to know each other, which hopefully there will be some type of connection where they will come together and continue to perpetuate those things that we hold dear to ourselves. So it's really, really a tough question, just because we're all spread out. So people on this call right now are from all over the place. So in terms of us being able to get together and perpetuate relationships within our organizations or within the culture, within the community, it's really tough. So I don't think apps, unless you got a Akom culture or Akom app for people, but I just don't think from a cultural perspective is part of our culture. It's this society, and we have that influence.
I'd like to say just one or two things. In regards to whether somebody's in the culture or not, if you tell them, you know what, have you thought about getting a reading on that person? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yeah, I'd like to get a reading to find out if this is going to work for you or not. And that's how we can begin to use some of the, some of the practices that we have within the culture, which about, is it spiritual aligned? Is the energy aligned? And I have more people asking that question who are not in the culture than people who are in the culture asking that question, to be very honest with you. So I just think that one way that we can integrate the culture is to emphasize to folks the necessity in getting a reading. It can be a poem reading, it can be IFA reading, it can be of astrological reading, but to really, to encourage people to get some kind of insights, I guess, to use a word to define itself, on the relationship. The other thing I would say, it really does talk about the necessity of rites of passage programs, which prepare young people for making those kinds of healthy kinds of, first of all, having the skills to be married. Most people don't. And they don't have, most of us don't have the skills. Most of us learn our skills, through trial and error. But I think the number one, to let people know whether they're in a culture or not, encourage them to get a reading. The other thing would be to make sure that in our rites of passage programs, that we're really preparing the young men and the young women with the skills that they need for a successful kind of marriage and relationship.
And I'll weigh in on the apps piece, just even though it's not my purview. I happen to think that there's so many ways that we can meet one another, and it's not, our connecting with someone of substance isn't simply here in the cultural circle. I mean, my current wife wasn't in the culture. My previous wife wasn't in the culture. It's and I didn't meet them, either one of them, via apps, but I could have theoretically met them through an app. And it really comes down to what happens when two people connect and how you begin to interact with each other. You can meet each other in the grocery store, in school. I mean, there's so many places for people to meet. and it's what happens once you connect. And since you asked the question, I'm curious about what your response is to it.
Okay, so thank you for that question. I'll die single before I look for a mate on an app. Let me just put it that way lightly. I think it's very, very risky. And, you know, although I don't understand it, you know, I'm reluctant, very, very reluctant to, you know, judge somebody who that's their choice. So at the end of the day, I never really understood it for why people feel like they would need to go to an app. But you know, I've tried very, very, very hard not to be judgmental if that's that person's choice, and you know, for whatever the reason it makes sense for them.
Sounds like a boundary.
Yes. Hopefully we can address a little bit more about, you know, the last couple comments I made about boundaries, since it's contrary to yours, Yao. Your statement.
Go there.
No, I'm asking you. I mean, I put my rebuttal in. So I just wanted to know, you know, I expanded a little bit more on it.
Can you speak to that? It is in the chat. It's quite long. So if you want to go ahead and maybe sum up what you were saying about your thoughts on boundaries.
I'll just read that to clarify that boundaries are not walls or barriers. They're not meant to be walls or barriers. They actually are put in place. We all have them. And we have different boundaries in different places, and for different people, they are necessary. They're not all at the same level of severity, rigidity, looseness, but they are put in place and they are necessary to teach people how we need and want to be treated. For example, I just give a couple of examples. A personal boundary, you know, we have, you know, don't touch my hair. Like that's a boundary for me and probably many other people. That's just one of many personal boundaries. Another boundary is we don't wear shoes in our house. So if that's the case, for the most part, we will want to communicate what our boundaries are to the people that, you know, are going to be in our space, and without expecting that they're going to know all of them. But when this situation happens, it's best to communicate, you know, well, I don't do that, we don't do that, and so on and so on. There's professional boundaries, there's relationship boundaries, but they're boundary in and of itself, boundaries and boundary work is much bigger than the idea of it being a rule or a block, or, you know, if somebody upsets you because they've done something that you asked them not to do. Like, for example, you know, if your children have a chore to make sure that you wash your dishes or whatever after you eat before you go to bed, and that's a rule in the house. But for whatever the reason, you know, that the parent may have set because they don't want, you know, roaches or whatever. And if the child does not honor that or respect that, then the purpose of that, in order for that child to know this is a trigger for the parent, this is going to piss the parent off. So for that particular person, you have to set the boundary a little higher. And of course, that's going to come with what feels like a consequence. So you can't eat after a certain time, or you can only eat on paper plates that you have to throw out, or whatever the choice of that parent is. That's just a mild, easy example. But even with, you know, in our relationships, it could be people that, you know, chose to just show up at your house. Well, you don't have an open door policy. That's a boundary of yours. You just can't show up. But for those who do, then, you know, you have to put in a boundary for that particular person that is, you know, what's the word I want? A little more stiff, a little more rigid. You see what I'm saying? So the bottom part, I just, you know, elaborated that boundaries are much more than what many people think they are. Lack of boundaries in your life, even in your personal boundaries, oftentimes, will end you up in therapy. It just will, because you'll find yourself in a place where everybody's just doing what they want, when they want, their agenda, what they want is more important to you than yours. You're not communicating what you need because you want this relationship, to be maintained. You don't want to lose the friendship. So the reluctance to, make yourself important or as important as the person that you're, just letting do whatever they want that you're not comfortable with, that has consequences, not just for that person, but in the relationships. So, it's if you put things in place, because, all right, so you want to call me, you want to do that. All right, I'm blocking you. I mean, it's a difference between a tit for a tat, like that passive aggressive stuff. That's different than putting in place boundaries. So, it's different levels of boundaries, boundaries are different at work. Your colleagues at work, they're not your friends. They're not your family. So there's going to be professional boundaries at work. You're not going to come home, hopefully, and tell your children, okay, so before you come, over here, knock on the door, wait till I look at you, call me between 2 and 4, and things like that. So it's a big difference.
It's interesting because I feel as though you have supported what I'm saying in everything that you said. And I'll try to point out those pieces in what I'm about to say. One is, when I was speaking of the sensitivity, there's a difference between a boundary and discomfort. And if I'm not suggesting that there are things that we're not comfortable with, I'm not suggesting that you may do something that I have a problem with. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I am suggesting is, if you do something that I'm not comfortable with, that I can share with you, I'm not comfortable with that. And I don't have to set up some kind of boundary beforehand. And that's the key. That's the key to where I'm coming from. It's like a predetermined area that you're creating where someone can't go. Instead of being aware of what's going on in a given moment of time and responding to that then. So someone may say something or do something to you, around you, and you don't have any problem with it. And someone else can say something and do something very similar or the exact same thing, and you're very uncomfortable with. And it's very reasonable for you to be able to say, I'm uncomfortable with that. And it's just as important for that individual, if they care about you and care about how you feel, to be able to respond to you, because you're just simply saying you're not comfortable. And now, if we look at it from just a boundaries place, I can say, oh, well, you didn't tell me that this wasn't a boundary. You didn't tell me this was a boundary, so I can do this all I want. And I don't care about your feelings.
Yeah, so that will happen. When you decide to put boundaries in place, some people, particularly people who are very close to you, and maybe some who are not, they're going to have pushback. That's a part of it. It's going to happen. But it's up to you, to let that impact your decision to put this boundary in place, because it's important to you, that you need this to be this way for you. If they want to disregard it, make it not important, or I'm gonna leave you alone, or you different now, then they need to carry on and do what they need to do. It should not put it this way. If it puts you in a position where you're struggling with, oh, well, I just don't want to lose this friendship, I don't want to, then you're going to have many challenges with boundaries in your life.
And that's fine. For me, that's perfectly fine. One of the things I tell my wife is, I'm with you no matter what you do. And my goal in saying that to her is to remove any fear of how she lives, how she conducts herself. I want her to be herself, period. Now, that doesn't mean she may not irritate me, piss me off, or or any of those negative responses that I may have. But it does mean that you don't have to worry about me escalating the situation or leaving or any of those types of things when you know I'm here. And many of us want to employ boundaries so that we don't have to deal with behaviors that we don't want to deal with. And you can live that life if that's what you want. I mean, there's a lot of people who live that life. That's not I'm okay with challenges. I'm okay with being challenged. I'm okay with discomfort. Kwesi?
So actually, this is Ajwa. We are coming up to 5 minutes. So what I will do is share a comment by Konfo Ama and Yamanche, unless you want to come off of mute and share your comment. And then Yao, I'll ask if you want to give your final remarks, and then I'll close it out. So Konfo Ama, did you want to share did you want to come off of mute and summarize what you shared? Okay, so basically she gave some points about, she said great point about boundaries. And I think a boundary in establishing relationships would be in the areas of, but not limited to, and she lists 4. 1, when you let someone in your house or personal space. 2, your parameters for the levels of physical closeness and intimacy. 3, communicating your areas of respect, value, and appreciation, etc. And 4, identifying what behaviors are appropriate for a new relationship versus a long-term relationship. So if you want to respond to that, Yao, and then also give any final remarks, and then I'll close us out.
I don't want to beat the boundaries piece that deeply. I mean, just I've shared my piece. I mean, I'm happy to give someone else the last word.
Perfect. So, but great. So we'll have that be the last word on boundaries. And it was, it took a little bit, I guess, getting kind of fired up around those boundaries. But feel free to share any closing thoughts for us. Anything that you want to leave us with?
So I'll take it back to the points that we have covered. Well, at least some of them. 1, please, in your relationship, be a united front. See your relationship as one unit. And if there's imbalance on one side, there will be an imbalance on the other. And work to create that balance. Work to do all that you can so that your partner is at peace, and work to be at peace. So that's 1. Another is give your partner your concerted attention. Give them your time. Your time is critical, and it's critically important. And I'm not just saying as some secondary while you're doing something else. Actually, please give your partner your time and work to have that implemented as a culture in your relationship. Another is, please be helpful to your partner. In all that you do, if you don't like what your partner's doing, or if you're going through this and that, whatever the challenges that you may be dealing with, if it's something your partner would like to see happen, come at it from a perspective of how can I help? What can I do to see your vision turn out? And with that, I simply say there's a big difference between being loving and loving someone. Being loving is a very active process. It's a very active thought pattern. Please participate in that thought pattern in all that you do with your partner. How can I be loving to my partner at this particular time? Not just simply be in love with them.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Want to remind everyone, first of all, say thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Yao, for leading us through that great discussion around love and cultivating loving relationships. Tomorrow, we will have Abrafohene Kwao Vital speaking on Black men and mental health. So, some of the comments that were coming up tonight about relationships being a mirror, knowing oneself, looking at oneself. I'm certain that mental health plays a key role in that, not just for men, but also for women. And it's so important that we really look at the issues facing our Black men. So we are really excited to bring to Akom Kese this topic on mental health for Black men. And we know that Brafahini, Dr. Kwal Vital, is going to have a wonderful presentation for us. So please join us tomorrow at 7 p.m. and you will receive the link. And if there's any closing thoughts, or if y'all want to give any shout outs, let y'all know how great of a job he did. Yes, in the chat, please do so. Please do so.
Just give some closing comments.
Yeah, any closing comments?
Hi, this is Mommy Yaya. I just want to say really quickly, as a person who has been out of a relationship for some time, this was very helpful to kind of bridge the gap from being at a certain mindset from my last relationship to seeing how to better handle things, because I was definitely alpha female. You're not going to tell me what to do because this is what it is, and I want to talk about it now. It helps to expand my mind to be a little bit more understanding and allowing for space to happen. So thank you very much. And thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I was getting in on the lady end, on the back end because I was just coming in from work, but I'm looking forward to giving the talk tomorrow. And I want to tie in this whole issue of boundaries when I talk about mental health and Black males. So if someone can please remind me to tie that in, because it will work in, but I just have to remember to do the tie-in because there's a point that needs to be made about how Black males or Black men or men in general are raised, and it will speak to that issue of boundaries.
I got you.
Okay, thank you. I know you got it. All right.
We're looking forward to it. We know it's going to be a great discussion. Yes. And such an important topic, often overlooked.
Ms. Palcho, for those who don't know how we got to this topic, last year when we did Akom Kese, we did a session about mental health and the family. And as part of the conversation, the discussion veered into mental health surrounding men. And that's when we asked Prophet Kwal, would he be willing to come and talk about it? So we realized that there's a lot of mental trauma in the Black community, period. I have a conversation with my wife all the time because she's afraid for my son to go outside, or she's afraid and she's concerned, and the level of anxiety that she has when he does things is very visible. And I'm aware of that. She's made me aware of that because I never picked up on that because I'm a Black man. I'm like, yo, we got to deal with this. We got to do what we got to do. But that level of trauma that exists in our community is serious. And we wanted to bring some type of healing, some type of discussion to this whole topic, this, surrounding the mental health. I mean, we have a lot of mental issues in our community that are really not being addressed because we're surviving. I mean, we're still in survival mode. Bottom line, we're surviving, and we're trying to make the best out of the situation that we're in. So I'm definitely looking forward to the conversation that Brafahini is going to bring to us tomorrow. And we definitely want to thank everybody for participating with this. Please, if you have not done so already, make a donation to help support this work. There's a lot of work still to be done, but whatever you're able to give and whatever you're able to do, we definitely appreciate it. And part of us doing this year was to give back to the community. Since we had the whole big thing with the Council of Elders, but this is our way of giving back to the community for helping us to do what we need to do. So thank you again.
And to close out, I'm just going to share some of those affirmations and words that were shared earlier at the beginning of this presentation around love, so that we can close out this session with that high energy of love. So Kwesi Amoa shared, one hand washes the other. Dion C. Monsanto shared, joy is my birthright. Nana Incia Opari shared, love is the energy of oneness, starting with being one with Inyame. And Phoeba shared one love. Professor Phoeba Anum Amwa shared one love. Abena Minu shared, you, spiritual beauty is your duty. Nana, a quote from Nana Sankofa, or your spiritual beauty is your duty, Nana Sankofa. And I shared, live, laugh, love, lift. So thank you all. Thank you all. Have a great evening and see you all tomorrow.
Good night.
Good night.